I am absolutely delighted to welcome Laura Henry-Allain, MBE, no less, for our session this afternoon. Many of you will know, Laura, you almost don't need an introduction in Birmingham now. You're famous, but an international award-winning author, creator, storyteller, producer. And many of you will know Laura from Jojo Gran Gran, the first Black British animation on CBeebies, and much loved by many children all over the world. But certainly in Birmingham, I've been very aware in going into settings that, children often talk about Jojo. But most importantly for us today, Laura's here because she is also the author of the book that we've chosen to be our shared book for transition, the Maya Marley and the New Friend, which is actually Laura's newest publication. And we were absolutely thrilled that Laura was kind enough to work with us and with the publishers to allow us to have access to the book even before the official publication date, so that we could start sharing that at our recent transition events. So we are absolutely delighted that you could join us on this hot afternoon, Laura, to share some of your thinking, your reflections, your expertise around transitions and how we can continue to think about and support our children across Birmingham. So over to you, and thank you very much.
And thank you for that kind introduction, and welcome, colleagues. I'm in a very, very hot London. So earlier on, I messaged Claire, and I did actually say, we're just going to go at a very gentle pace, because I remember those hot sunny days when you're working directly with children. The last thing you need is to join a webinar. For those, because I know this is being recorded, so for the colleagues who are listening live. So I appreciate you joining the session. But one of the things to start with, I am dyslexic. Some of you, I don't know if you want to put in the chat, have heard me speak before. I was in Birmingham 2 weeks ago when I did the keynote then. There's a couple of slides in this that are going to be the same, albeit a little bit different. Please feel free. I will allow time at the end for questions and reflections. But if you have any burning questions as I'm going through each slide and you feel, oh, what is she talking about? What acronym is she using? I've never heard of this before. Oh, and I totally disagree with Laura. Please feel free, because sometimes I could be sharing something, colleagues, that may be legislation, it may just be good guidance, and it may be something that is part of my own philosophical practice. It could be research, etc. Yeah. And in terms of the point of language, because I could see it come up, there was a childminder come in. So hello, I hope we have more than one childminder this afternoon. I'm going to call, I know we've got childminder educators, practitioners. We've also too got colleagues who work in family centres, children's centres, etc. Everybody's just going to be an educator, because it just makes my life easier. And settings, so educator and settings. So that's everybody together. Otherwise, we'll be here till 9 o'clock this evening. But also too, on that point, colleagues, if I give an example and you feel, oh, I work in a school, it's not going to translate to my practice, please feel free to put in the chat and say, Laura, I work in a school. How can I adapt this for my setting? And vice versa, if you are a childminder, etc. Because I want everybody, irrespective of where you work, to get something out of this webinar. And some of it you may feel, oh, I've heard of this before. Yes, Laura, I've heard you share this before. Birmingham have been sharing this already, etc. Yeah. So, and Claire, and so I will not be able to see the questions. If any questions and reflections come in, please can you let me know? Yeah.
Definitely. I'll monitor the chat So yes,
Yes,
no
you'll
problem.
be my PA.
I will. I will.
This evening. I'll have to pay you afterwards. So,
All right.
colleagues, I always like since January I've been sharing it's the National Year of Reading because I'm one of the ambassadors, and hence the project in with Birmingham Early Years links to a book. So I do hope now that we're halfway through the year, because I did a keynote, very first one in January, and out of 150 delegates, I would say only about 5 delegates knew it was the National Year of Reading. So I hope now as we go through that we are aware of the National Year of Reading. And if you go on the website, there's loads of information for early year settings. The other thing, I love sharing quotes, and I love this. I came across this because I've used it with a setting recently. If we want children to move, we've got to get them out of their chairs first. And I think this also, to colleagues, links to last week where we've had the social media banned, and I will talk about screen time as we go through. There we go. So those of you who know me, I'm going to stop saying those of you who know me. I always start the session with this kit bag approach. And just before lockdown, I was in sunny old Scotland in Glasgow. I was just about to do a keynote. I had the clicker in my hand, and Pauline, the organizer, said, "Laura, can you sit down?" I thought I'd been told off. And on every table had one of these bags. And the leader on the table unraveled it. And I thought, oh, we're going to be doing a bit of sewing before I start doing my keynote. And there's all different parts of it. But in summary, we started off with a present card to set the scene. And then the leader on the table shared this card, this feelings card, and it does actually link quite nicely into transitions. And we had to choose a colour and state how we were feeling. So it doesn't matter if it's a dark colour, it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative colour, and vice versa. And on that day, I remember I did choose, I think it was the purple, because my son had just started university and he wasn't settling in quite well. But if I had to choose a colour now, I would choose orange because I'm hot. I'm feeling very, very hot. I've got multiple feelings. I'm excited to be working with Birmingham. Also, too, sometimes it is difficult because I cannot see you guys at all. So I'm not picking up facial expressions. I'm not feeling if you're smiling or if you're thinking, what is she talking about? I can't see that. So it's a bit tricky doing a webinar. I'm hot, and I'm pleased that I've had a whole day at home, because Saturday I was in Ascot, which is another story for another day. I'll tell you about that. And then yesterday I did a family event. So I was pleased to be at home. So I'm feeling hot and okay. So does anybody want to have a pause for a ponder? Maybe put it in the chat. I don't know, Claire, if colleagues are able to unmute themselves. And any of the
Yes.
colleagues, who are listening later on, have that pause for ponder as well.
Yeah, you can unmute if you'd like to, or you can pop in the
Claire,
chat.
how are you feeling, Claire, this afternoon?
Well, I was going to say red. I think I'm even hotter than you are. My face is feeling very red. But yes, a little bit hot, a little bit bothered. But I also feel that energy of red excitement to be here and to be thinking about what a fabulous project that we're involved with at the moment, and what an opportunity we've got as practitioners working across Birmingham. So it's a sort of an excited red as well as a hot red.
Anybody else or anything in the chat?
Oh, Liz is feeling a little bit blue because she's suffering with a sore throat and a cough. Bit
Oh,
pink.
sorry to hear that.
Kieran's a bit pink, being loving and looking after my sister.
Yeah, fantastic. As they probably come through, right? When I used this when I was up in Scotland, when I came back, I actually ordered one of these because I absolutely loved it, and I could see how it could work, especially on supporting children with their PSCD, communication and language and literacy. And so many people shared so much. The organizer herself, she said the night before they had an event, so she was feeling really tired. And when I've gone on to use it in different CPD sessions. There was a couple of colleagues. I used to deliver a leadership course, and two colleagues are from the same setting, and they said, Laura, the night before, one of our colleagues just found out she had a miscarriage. There was another colleague there who said she might find out in the afternoon if her daughter's got a terminal illness. Yeah. And so in Scotland, the colleague who founded this, who created this, Dr. Margaret Hannah, and if you Google the kit bag approach, we will provide resources and links. There's loads of different information where you can use it age, stage and ability appropriate with children aged from about 2 to 3 to 99 as well. And I loved it so much that they got me involved in a project with the University of Surrey for children in foster care, for children to be able to state their feelings. I nursery sat my friend's nursery a few years ago, and every single member of staff in that was there for about a week and a bit. I had a one-on-one session and I used this. So it's a way for me, in summary, colleagues, that when we're transitioning ourselves from one thing to the next, we've all had a busy day now. We've come into, sometimes, isn't it, throughout the course of our day, we're jumping from one thing to the next. As soon as I finish this, I'm already thinking about dinner that I have to do, pack my bag for tomorrow. So it's a way of grounding ourselves as we transition, and think about the children within our settings as well, who may welcome this approach. And because it is research based, it's just beautiful in my humble opinion. So there we are. That's the kit bag approach. I can only, yeah, sorry.
We've got a couple. No, I'm just going to say there's a couple more in the chat.
Oh yes, please share.
Yellow, Penny's feeling yellow, a bit hot. We've got some others that are saying they're feeling yellow, bright and positive, albeit a bit melty. Yellow, sunny, hot and bright, hot and flustered, as I've just got back from a full day trip with a nursery class. So I don't know what colour you're going to be there, Shamim, but yeah, probably going to be on the red or yellow or orange, probably.
I hear that, Shamim, when I'm on the public transport in London and I see groups of children going, because I live in the suburbs, going into London, and they're there, they've got all the helpers for the outing. And I remember those days when I used to be a helper for my children as well. The other thing as well, talking about it being quite hot, and because we are early years people, we're not used to sitting down for long periods of time. We will have a comfort break half the way through. Yeah. So obviously, probably in about another 45 minutes, we will have a little bit of a break. Our well-being is important. It's like the airport, the airplane analogy, isn't it? We've got to put the mask on ourselves first. Induction's all about transitions, isn't it? When we reflect back on ourselves. Probably I just have to think now, in the year 1999, that's a Prince song, isn't it? 1999, I started a job in a local authority. I am quite old, colleagues, as a registration inspection officer in a local authority. It was part-time because I had it was job share actually, because I had two very young children. So the first day, I'm feeling very nervous. I'm going into this new building and I'm just thinking, oh, what's in store? Because it was, equivalent to probably what the early years colleagues do now. This was pre-Ofsted. And so I sat in, and my line manager, she went through some of the policies and procedures as you do as a welcome. And I said, oh, I've got to use the toilet. And she said, oh, I should have showed you that as soon as you came in. And she said, oh, it's over there. Off I went to the toilet. And guess what I did? Instead of pulling, I pulled the red cord. And then two members of staff came rushing to the toilet. Are you okay, Laura? Are you okay? And I said, oops, I thought that was the flush cord, but it wasn't. It was the emergency cord. Yeah. And I'm sure, and I remember one of the colleagues, Fleur, said to me, welcome to Southwark, Laura. This is part of your induction. And I'm sure if we had a further conversation, we've all probably got a funny story of where we've moved, where we've transitioned into somewhere new, and how I could find that quite funny. But if we reflect for a few seconds on, imagine if that was a child, how frightening that could be for them. And I'm an adult and I had the language to say, no, it was a mistake, you know. So that as a starting point in terms of transitions is to think about internal and external transitions that we've had, and then reflect on the children that are in our setting and the transitions that they're going through. And I always go back to the principles of the EYFS, you know, albeit it's 18 years. This doc, can you believe it now? It's 18 years old. But I just think, I know it's still not widely used, but I always think sometimes we've got to have a little look back to what we were previously doing. And I still hold on to this in terms of starting with the child. What are the child's thoughts and feelings in terms of their transitions? What are the relationships that we have? And I never, even from 18 years ago, that term positive relationships never sat well with me, because I thought, oh, I had to go to my doctor's this morning. I've got a positive relationship with the staff, the reception staff. You know, Christmas I get them a box of chocolates and a card, but it's not a personal relationship. We have personal, loving relationships with children. And I wanted to reference there a little bit my colleague, Dr. Jules Page, and her work around professional love and what that looks like and what that feels like and that sense of belonging. Then we have a look at the environment. What does that environment look like and feel like for children? Are children feeling that this is somewhere that welcomes them, that it's welcoming to families? I always say, colleagues, because I do more author visits now as opposed to hands-on consultancy, and train like tomorrow is an author's visit, I can normally tell the organizational behavior of a setting within a few seconds of walking into that, in terms of how I've been received as a visitor. And that comes back down to that organizational behavior. So think about that as a pause to ponder. What does the culture, your transitional culture, look like for children and their families? Because on one hand, yes, the child is number one, is at the center of everything we do, right? There's no debate, it's non-negotiable. But then equally too, how are we welcoming their families? And I do remember once, when I was a lovely Ofsted inspector. Should I go and run and hide now? I was a nice one. And you know what it's like. You have to speak to parents. And I spoke to parents and they said, oh, you know, Laura, it's been, you know, obviously introduce myself. Our child loves it here, but actually we didn't feel welcome. And it was straight away, tell me more, tell me more. What do you mean by that? Let me start unpicking this. What do you mean by that? And they said, Laura, you know, we're not ashamed to say we were ex-drug users and we're being clean now, even before our child was born, but we feel the staff are judging us in their behaviour. And I said, oh, you know, can you give me a quite clear example? Because I need to understand to obviously to make a note of this with my untidy handwriting. We didn't have laptops then. And she said, oh, you know, it's the way we observe them talking to other parents to how they talk to us. Yeah. So think about that as well. And we do know subconsciously we pick up quite a lot how we speak to children and others. And we are human, isn't it? There are going to be more people who we gravitate to, isn't there? But we have to. So that's what they were saying to me. They were saying the tone, the way that the staff spoke to them, as if they were judging them as parents and discriminating them because of their past behavior. Yeah. So think about that in terms of our organizational behavior. Do we as a setting have to have a conversation, and how is the culture fed into our transitioning, I'm verbally dyslexic, our transitioning policy colleagues. Yeah. So this, I know some of you who, if you were here in Birmingham 2 weeks ago when we did the launch, I shared this, and Dr. Jackie Cousins, she's a fab consultant in early years, early childhood person. And it was at a tactic or tic tac conference, probably about 12 years ago. And I did the keynote in the morning and Jackie did the afternoon. And I said to her, after she finished, I said, I wish I heard you first, because it would have enabled me to share my story, Jackie. And she said, and when I first met her in the morning, I thought, oh God, you're wonderful. She's essentially a little bow going on, and she's just, an amazing person. And so she shared, she's probably, I would say, pushing 80 now. She must be. That when her mum had her at age 15 or 16, and they were in a traveling community that did, circuses and fun fairs. And at that point, it was deemed it wasn't safe for Jackie to be traveling around as a baby. Jackie was put into care at age 8. Her mum went back to care and went to the judge and said, I am settled now. I want Jackie to come back to me. For whatever reason, the judge said no and said she'll permanently be in care. Eleanor Goldsmith was in court that day as her advocate. We know Eleanor, heuristic play, key person approach. And so when Jackie shared Eleanor was there, it made sense around the work that Eleanor does, that she would be there supporting Jackie. And this was probably where some of her work came from, around key person attachment, etc. And Jackie said from that moment she went mute when she was 8. She was taken away to the countryside out of London, and she said these were really kind nuns, not like the ones we've heard stories from, like the Magdalena laundries, etc. And she said they were super supportive to her in terms of the relationships, etc. And they'd have proper winters there, and she learned how to ice skate. They brought her back to London, near Queensway, and she said, I went with the nun order, the Our Lady of Sign. And I went, oh, I went to that school. That was the order of nuns in the school that I went to. And she said from those relationships, as she had many transitions in her life, but remembering that personal relationship that she had when she moved out of London, from being somebody who was mute, who became confident from those relationships. And then it made me reflect on my own personal story. And after, as I told Jackie, and normally, colleagues, I do share, I'm one of 6. I would have a photograph of my siblings, but I don't now, because it's their story as well. So it's respect for them. So I can share it, but I just don't show off photographs of when I was little. And I'm one of 6. My mum had us back to back. She always wanted 6 children back to back. She had 6 children in 8 years, colleague, in 8 years. And I was in the middle. My parents had just got divorced. And for some reason, my grandmother we didn't go to her. We were all split up, and I was the only one who went to someone else. And I remember crying and sobbing when we went to visit my mum in hospital. My gran told me later she tried to come and get me from this neighbour, and it was drama. I used to live opposite Grenfell Tower. I went to a nursery class there. My mum told me years later, when there was a story of a child leaving a nursery, walked out of a nursery, that I did that. I could just imagine, I've had enough now. I'm walking home. I'm walking back home, because I would have been, I'm summer born, so I probably would have been about 3 when I did that. Thank goodness it was a cul-de-sac where the school was. Then when I started school, again, summer born. I remember it. It was my birthday last week, colleagues. Anyways, I remember I must have been one of these children settling in that cried and cried and cried, and they probably tried so many things to stop me crying. And I remember doing finger painting, on the table where you do your fingers and then they put the paper on top to get the pattern. I haven't seen that activity for a while in settings. And I remember the tears falling onto the table. And then fast forward it, when I started to work with children in the family centre, most of the children were known to social services and were in care. So one particular child, we organised the access visit. Mum came for about an hour. When Mum left, up to this day, even with my own children, I've never seen a child cry like that. He was scratching on the floor, on the door. Oh, it was horrendous, and I could feel it in my heart. I burst into tears because it reminded me of what Jackie and Eleanor explained. And I said to a colleague, please take over. And I went into the staff room and I sobbed and I sobbed and I sobbed. And that's what made me think. And I said to Jackie, thank you for sharing. And I share that story as a reminder for all of us that about us being mindful of children when they are transitioning, because that child was in care. Some children, as we know, are in kinship care, some children are in foster care. Parents may have just got divorced when they come to you. I was just reflecting as well, colleagues, when I was thinking about this afternoon, my eldest son, when he started school, we had just moved, yeah, and I was pregnant. So there were so many things going on for him. Now, he just started in a nursery class within a school. We had just moved and I was 8 months pregnant. So all of these different things that were going on for him, you know? And we know about Frederick Froebel, his work. I was fortunate enough about 10 years ago to go to Germany, and the German translator who was translating his life story, the person who was translating, she was in tears because he was beaten by his stepmother and she was really cruel to him. So isn't it any wonder when we know about his work where he was coming from? Because if we look back to this, what Eleanor's saying, and Jackie, those personal and professional theories and how super important they are, because our work, all of us here, we work with children for a reason. It's not by accident, you know, there is something there within all of us. And we always, I think, need to be mindful of that as well, how that may hinder or support the work that we do with children and their families. And then when I shared this at a conference many years ago, then I received this email, self-care, I'm just having some water. So she was able to share her story with me as well. Yeah. Colleagues, you will get the slides to this. I will share with with Claire and the team. So you've got them, especially for colleagues who aren't able to join us for whatever reason. And then this book, I say everybody who works in early years must read this book because Dr. Bruce Perry was introduced to his work many years ago. And, you know, if we've seen a parent or that particular child melting down with me trying to support, with me as the educator, I can't remember what our title was actually called there when I worked in that place, me as the educator bursting into tears. Some people may feel, what's wrong with Laura? What's wrong with Laura? Why is she crying? What's wrong with this child? Why is that child throwing the chair? Why is that parent going to slap me in my face? Why is this colleague really rude to me today? So Bruce said, rather than saying, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? We should reframe it and say, what happened to you? So he talked about it on Oprah about 30 years ago. Within lockdown, this book came out, and I really strongly recommend you get this book. If it's a financial issue, loan it from your local library because it is an important book which really sets the scene in terms of how we support children and adults around conversations on trauma, resilience and healing. And then I have this thing, know the person, know the story. How can we have that level of professional curiosity for our families who are joining us for the first time? And Professor Lucy Lumsden, I should have added here, she got an OBE a couple of weeks ago. I need to change this. And she's head of early years. I think she's retired now at Nottingham University. I used to do a safeguarding conference and Eunice spoke and she said, rather than go for your 10,000 policies and procedures, which are all super important, colleagues, start the conversation with our parents. Why did you name your child? Why did you name your child that? And I know it's going to be different if we're speaking to a foster carer or somebody who's adopted or kinship carer who may not know the reason why, we may have to frame it a bit differently, or within the child's life box, they may be that the why that child was named that particular name. For me, Laura, my mum was watching a black and white movie in the 60s and she said, oh, if it's a girl, that's it, bingo. I don't think my dad got a say, it's Laura. He did get a little bit of a say because my middle name Josephine, hence Jojo and Gran, not a lot of people know that, is from my paternal grandmother. And colleagues that have used this approach with new families starting have fed back and said, wow, Laura, it changes the dynamics. It really empowers the parents. So I think everything that we need to be doing is to be empowering our children and our families to have that say in those transitions. And I know sometimes I've been guilty of this. If, you know, next year it's coming up to 40 years that I've worked in early years. And if I think back to some of the practice, Claire's nodding, that we used to probably do about 40 years, we would never do that now, right? Because we're all, as I say to people, we're all work in progress, yeah? And Maya Angelou has that saying, do the best you can, and then when you know better, we do better, right? Yeah. So transition, what does it mean? And I know some of you know all of this, all of this information. So as you know, some of the transitions that I personally had, and if we were able to take a pause for a ponder, some of them can be really challenging and exciting, especially if you wanted to leave a place of employment. You're just thinking, can't wait to get out of this joint, I'm going somewhere else. But then sometimes we hear that term, don't we? We hear it's mixed feelings, right? Isn't it? And we know back when, years ago, colleagues, didn't we, that I remember when I moved, I moved when I was, I think, 6. I was age 6, I do remember. It was a hot day like this, like today. My mum didn't tell us we were moving. We just moved. And it was like that then, wasn't it? Children weren't told that things weren't happening. Now we do as much as possible. We do share with children and their families in terms of that prep work to support children with their emotional well-being. I remember a colleague, I'm NNEB trained initially, although I've done teaching qualifications, management qualifications since, but I'm old school NNEB. And I remember I must have just had my son, early 90s, meeting a colleague, and she had done the NNEB in the 1950s. And the bulk of the NNEBs then used to work in children's homes. And she said a family had just come in. It was a boy and brother and a sister, rather. And she said they looked as if they hadn't, I get goosebumps now talking about it, as if they hadn't had a wash in a few months. Literally, the clothes, she said, were practically sticking onto them. But the procedure in the children's home was, as soon as the children come in, you're going to guess what I'm going to say, they're going to have a bath. We got to literally hose them down, so to speak, clean clothes. But she knew in her heart that that wasn't the best thing to do for those children. The best thing probably, oh yeah, again, I got goosebumps. It just really gets to my heart, was to leave them in their clothes, because guess what? That was a part of them. So think about that. What can we keep? And she said, Laura, and I can visualize her now, God rest her soul, Pat Patricia Cole. She's passed away now. I can hear her voice, and she said, I regretted bathing them because I knew it was wrong. Yeah. So again, I'm not saying sometimes, don't quote me on this, to go against policy and procedure all the time. But remember what I said, we've got to, that the needs of the child has to come back first. Yeah. Yeah, but for just to dance my way through some of these points and the final one, some children face very personal transitions, and some of those I've shared with you, mine and for some other children as well. Yeah. And I'm sure when I go into the school tomorrow with my author hat on, some of those children, and I sometimes do know I can pick up there are challenges for them that are taking place. I did an authors event. I haven't had a weekend at home, colleagues, for ages. Last week, Saturday, and all the families purchased one of my books from the bookseller. There was one child and his mum. They didn't purchase a book. So again, I'm clocking them. So you know what I did? I went over to them because we were sitting down afterwards. We had some snacks. I sat down. I started that relation. What's your child's name? Thank you for coming. And I just talked to her and she said to me, oh, thank you for the book. And I said, no, it's no skin of mine. As you can, I'll donate that to you. And she shared with me, she said he going to school in September, attends nursery a day and a half a week. So I reckon it's a child who's on funded hours. I'm probably saying it wrong, but I hazard a guess it was that. The other thing that I clocked, they were the last to leave. So I'm picking up that there's this family support network. So again, our professional curiosity. I said to the organizer, I said, I can't help myself. Once an early years person, always an early years person. And I thought about that child and his mum. What was it going to be like for them for the rest of the afternoon? Yeah. For the rest of the weekend, so to speak. Yeah. I've got so many slides, but I just always end up telling stories, hence probably why I'm an author. I just share with you stories. um, I'm just going to have some sip of my water for a couple of for a minute or so, colleagues. So just think about these. I've shared with you transitions that I had in my childhood, which has had an impact on me emotionally. That's why I'm very hot on the key person approach and attachments. Think of, I would say two, because we're going to be time poor at the minute. One transition in your life, a daily one and a one-off one. How did you cope with these transitions? What are your feelings around these transitions? And colleagues, you don't have to share if you don't want to. You can just think about it in your head because it may be something that's really personal to you. Yeah. I just want us to think about it. And if you want to, you can put it in the chat or unmute yourself. It's totally up to you. Is there anything clear coming?
There's nothing in the chat at the moment around transition.
That's absolutely okay. As I said,
Yeah.
it's not a test, and I know colleagues are probably thinking about it, but I think it's really helpful for us to think about. And I do remember once when I got a job when I first came out of college, and the head there in this family centre she said, I got the job because I said something like, I was probably more Cockney than this. Oh, I maybe think that it's because you know, we have to think about what it feels for us. Do you know what I mean? And therefore, then, what does it feel for the light? So, in essentially, what I was saying is have, we should probably, that quote, walk a mile in that child and their family's shoes to have that understanding. It's that empathy, isn't it? Yeah.
Somebody shared that a transition that obviously struck them was moving to teach reception after teaching in nursery for 14 years, feeling anxious because they're out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, and that's quite understandable to hold on to that term about feeling anxious and completely out of our comfort zone. Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
right to have those feelings. And I think obviously, and I think sometimes, I used to be a governor myself and, working with schools and settings for many years. And people would say, yeah, but people are, trained to work in all areas. and they should, you know, suck into it. I'm thinking, well, no, we should acknowledge that they're feeling anxious about that change, you know?
Somebody's
And
added a moving to a different sort of job, moving from a home-based job to one in an office. Again, you know, that change, they haven't put causing anxiety, but you can understand, you know, there would be that different response. So yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, because it's a complete change of environment for you, you know. And, you know, especially on this in terms of when we think about that stress hormone, cortisol, isn't it? I know when I'm feeling very super um, emotional about something that's going to happen, it does affect my bowel movements. And that just shows you, and most of us have probably had that feeling where it does, where you've got that nervous that you just literally have to run to the bathroom beforehand. And that's the power of that stress hormone, isn't it? How it has that impact on us. And that isn't it any wonder that when some children start with us, that they digress. Their parents, you know, they've been dry throughout the day. I don't know why they're wet now, because of that stress hormone that they're using as that coping mechanism. And we all cope with things differently, colleagues. And I think we all know that, preaching to the converted. And I remember once I did a course many, many years ago before I had my children. It was an evening course in a hospital. It was an introduction to psychology. And the trainer there, he was a psychologist in the hospital. We had two trainers, somebody else who worked in the hospital around this thing, how we all cope with things differently. And he gave the example was he was on the tube, getting ready to go to work. For those of you who familiar with the London Tube network. And unfortunately, trigger warning, somebody decided to die by suicide. He said one person was effing and blinding. How the F am I going to get to work now? How the F am I going to get to work now? And somebody else was in a corner throwing up. Yeah. And that stayed with me, even though that it was a course from well over probably 35 years ago. I remember it because what I remember is, yes, or everything we are all affected differently. And the same for children. As you know, some children come skipping in through transitions. Other children take 2 to 3 weeks. If you were, you know, the little Laura now, coming into your setting with that story, I would have probably been one of these children that kept with those transitions. Yeah. So, and again, just some pause for ponder here. What I've just shared, how that has an effect on children and their families. Yeah. I was one of those parents that was always probably hanging around at the door. Yeah. And, you know, probably just bye, bye for the 100th time. Are you going to be okay? No, but it's me. I'm the one that's not okay. My child is fine. Yeah. So in terms of that, colleagues, and I always say that, thinking back again to that Dr. Bruce Perry, what's going on for that parent? What's going on for that parent that's sharing with you those 10,000 emails in the day? You know, is Fatima okay? Is Johnny okay? You know, and I've been in a setting where they get the call, they say, oh no, it's fine, you know, Mohammed's fine now, he's playing in the sand, he's absolutely okay, he's stopped crying. We've all had those conversations, right? But then I think that when we reframe it to empower parents to maybe share their story, we may get that more of that understanding to think this is the reason why this family is like this, you know? So again, I know you're doing all of these wonderful things in your setting already. You know, how can we help with all of these things that I've said around the communication? Just being mindful how we may need to edit, update our transition policy or any other policy. We've done some reflections already on the needs of the child, how we plan the process, and just to make it less traumatic, you know? This is a good one that I love doing. Think of something that's important to you. I will start and I will say my phone. It's got photos of my two sons, and here is a wash of my family, my grandmother. This is the original gran up here. And so these are things that are important to me. My jewelry. I never leave home without my jewelry. Sentimental reason. My son bought me this for, I think, for my birthday or Mother's Day, probably about over 20 years ago. So think about something that's important for you that you always have on your person all the time. Anybody? Or early years team, come on, you started off. Remembering I can't see the comments, colleagues, so
There's no comments in there yet. I was just hanging on to see whether there was anything.
But Claire, talk to me about what's important to you. What do you always have on your person?
Well, now I need my glasses because otherwise I can't see what's going on and I can't read and I can't access things. So, that's a really important thing for me. There's a couple of things coming in the chat. Somebody is diabetic, so they need their blood meter. Uh, Very important. A ring that used to be their mum's. Family. Several people putting that. A necklace given to them from their grandmother. A bracelet, which was a present from an uncle, a late uncle. Phone, because they use it to pay for everything. Can't do much nowadays, can you? That's it. Wedding rings as well. Photos of family on the phone screen. Yeah.
So you can see, colleagues, thanks Claire for sharing, and thanks for colleagues for sharing, but please feel free to add as we go along. There's a method to my madness, is that we all have these things that are important to us. And if you cross-reference the story that I shared of those two children who entered that home probably over 60 years ago, their clothes were important to them, albeit we thought they were dirty. Yeah. And in the other story, one of the jobs that I used to have, I was a lecturer in a adult education place, and I became curriculum manager. And we had the creche was on site, and I can't remember what module we were doing, and students came back to me and they said, Laura, everything you're telling us here, we don't see in the creche. And I said, tell me more. Tell me more, tell me more, as the song says. And I said, what's going on? Give me an example. And they said, well, Laura, you know what happened when you was just saying about settling in and everything? We had a new child starting, so obviously they had a lot of ESOL students. So as we know, English is an additional language. So children who are just newly in, yeah. And I know in Birmingham as a city, you are going to have new families in as well from another country. So this child, who was about 2 or 3, had a tiny rucksack on their back, yeah. The member of staff, she said, ripped it off the child and said, you don't need that, and hanged the rucksack onto the coat peg, and the child just burst out crying. Obviously, I went round there and I had a word with them, a gentle chat, as I do, because at the end of the day, that was that child's transitional object. We all have our transitional objects as adults. And I know, colleagues, we have policies that says no toys, nothing to be brought in from home. But I think we need to really think about that and I know sometimes there's that disclaimer that says if it gets lost, parent, it's nothing to do with us. But for some children, I know with for colleagues here who are working with babies, we do have that. We may have, a piece of, material or something that's got the smell on it, and sometimes I know from that sensory point of view, I could be somewhere and it reminds me of something like lavender. My grandmother loved lavender. So for children as well. So think about that. when we're having conversations with parents, what are their children's transitional objects? Because we all have them as adults. Yeah. So Dr. Stuart Shackner, my pal from Canada, he's a great professional colleague. I first heard him speak, I have to think how old I am now. It was when I was 40, 18 years ago. Do the maths and work out how old I am now. And we were at a global conference in sunny old Belfast. And it was about 1,000 people in the room. You couldn't hear a pin drop because, I don't know if any colleague knows his work on self-regulation. I call him the godfather of self-regulation. And he gave an example of all the work that he does, his papers, etc. There's a daycare place on site. The staff came over to him and said, Stuart, we know you do all this work about brain development and trauma. Self-regulation, can you come down to the crash? Because there's a child who's not settling in, has gone 3 weeks in, they're not settling in. He went in and he said within 5 minutes, he knew what was wrong with the child. And he said, the lights, the strip lights. Yeah. And some brave soul out of 1,000 people put their hand up and said, how did you know that? And he said, the child kept on going like that. Kept on going like that. Yeah. So if you think about that, again, that professional curiosity, and I call it being turned on and tuned in. My oldest son, colleagues, he's autistic. I'm still learning. He's going to be 33 soon. He doesn't like people touching him. And you can see my hands in him. I'm a very touchy-feely type person. My youngest son, he's like that, but Ryan doesn't like me touching him. And I have to respect that. We have to respect, yeah? So I said to him one day, and he did have more of an awareness, I said, Ryan, just tell me, what is it? I'm trying to understand. What is it you don't like about people touching you? He didn't answer me. I was downstairs. 5 hours later, typical Ryan, he came running downstairs. And he said, ice cream, Mum. And I went, there's ice cream in the freezer. He said, ice cream. I said, there's ice cream in the freezer. He said, you're not listening. And I said, no, tell me, what is it? Ice cream. He said, you asked me earlier what it feels like when people touch me. He said, it feels like cold ice cream on my teeth. When you get that feeling. So could you imagine that every time? And it could just be like that. He's also it's the sensory processing, loud music. Yeah. But then he goes to Arsenal matches. He supports Arsenal. So think about children when I'm talking about judging as well, practice that I used to do years ago, where you used to see a child that never used to like getting their hands dirty or corn flour or, painting. And you'd think, I bet you their parents are really super, always wiping their hands down. But think about it. It could be that the child has some sensory processing issue. And sensory processing may have a major impact on children's transitions in terms of settling. Ryan, when I studied, and you colleagues know, we all know about schemas. And here's one I thought when I was studying, because he was about 3 when I was studying about schemas, I thought his was oh God, I'm going like that, but you know what I mean. Claire, help me out. You know what I mean? The trajectory one, the trajectory schema. That's the one. If he was on a game show, I've won us £1 million. I've got it. Trajectory, the trajectory schema. And so I've got a picture of Ryan when I was in my old house. The easel was there. He's painting like that, up and down. He'd line up cars, Lego, everything on his bike once. No fear of danger because of the autism. I remember him on his bike, just going across a busy road on his bike. So I thought it was trajectory. So once when I was when he was diagnosed, I was with my mum, long story short, and we was in this glass lift we used to go to. I said, Mum, do you remember Ryan used to love this lift, up and down in this lift? And we used to get the train because of I thought it was the schema. But actually, there is a link between autism and and schemas. So sometimes we may think it's a schematic pattern, but actually it is actually this autism, the child may be on the spectrum, which we can't diagnose because it has to be diagnosed officially, and by a professional. And on that note, as I'm melting away, colleagues, can we just have a 5-minute leg stretch break? I'll get the other slide up. So come back just before 16:35. I'm going to go and just put some cold water on me for 5 minutes.
Good idea.
Right, welcome back, colleagues. We've got about 30 minutes left. It's a minute to go, but I'm just settling back in. And there are going to I will allow for questions at the end, but I'm just going to go through the next sort of few slides, but some of them I will speed up. I will speed it up. So there's more people joining, which is good. Okie dokie.
Yes.
So
I think a couple of people may have gone out and then come back in.
Come back in. Yeah.
But lots of people still here, so hopefully you've managed to get a little leg stretch and a drink. And
exactly.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to part 2. So this, I don't know if we've got any colleagues from Oasis Academy in Woodbury. This is a Birmingham school. So basically, Kira, the deputy head teacher, this is her baby, so to speak, and it's called Bambinos and Babies. And so the concept is that before parents start, 2 to 3 years, so the sessions would be now for children starting in 2027 and 2028. So what Kira does is to talk about the research. It's around books, about the importance of books. So research from the National Literacy Trust, book trusts, etc. And then I go in on the floor sharing stories with children and asking their questions. And some children are just running around, not listening. Some come up and peek at the book. So it's all, and it lasts for about 45 minutes. But what's good about that, I've been back to the school now probably about 3 or 4 times. And the last time I was there, I was actually very, very tired. And one parent said, "Oh, welcome back." Another one parent said, "Are you okay, Laura? You look really, really tired." And that just showed to me that parent, how I had built a relationship, because everything comes back down to relationships. And most of you are probably familiar with Twinkle, the resource bank. I think that's what they're called. They filmed us there in February, so look out for that in terms of their project, what they do around reading and literacy, and the Bambinos and Babies project. And then also you have a few parents talking about their experience, that start of the belonging and the welcoming, that it starts literally 2 years before their child starts school. And there's a child reading a Jojo and Gran book there, obviously. So again, as you know about reading the Red Book, I'm not going to labour on this. My sister's a health visitor. So about using that, because that's got so much important information in there about the child. My son was born with positional talipes, which would have been very super helpful to his early years setting. I don't like Mondays. It's Monday today recording this. I remember seeing when I was doing a consultancy visit many years ago, about 12 years ago. It was a Monday. A child came in with his dad. And throughout that hour, he was having meltdowns. He was throwing things. He was taking toys from other children. I went over to his key person and I said, "What's happened to this child?" Bruce Perry again. See what I did there? What happened to this child? And she said to me, "Oh, Laura, you know what? Every other weekend he goes and stays at his dad. So this is what we see on a Monday." And I just said, what I think you need to probably do is just sit down and snuggle, because he's actually saying, "I don't feel okay at the minute." So this is where this behavior is coming from. So therefore, then now we know every other Monday you need to be there for him emotionally and as well as physically. Yeah, isn't it any wonder? So this is what I always say. You can always tell what a child is going to be like, how they come in the morning. Yeah, okay. And then this one, too much and too many. How many changes? Again, I was in a setting, somebody shared this with me, and they were just there on a visit. A child who was age 2 was crying and crying and crying. And she cuddled this child as a visitor. The child came to her, which was alarm bells ringing because she's a visitor. Then fed back to the head, the manager afterwards, about their visit and said it wasn't okay this morning, and shared a reason. She said, "Oh, that's child XYZ. Every time we have a room change, this is the behaviour that we see, that she has, these meltdowns." And she calculated that if this child started in this nursery as a baby and then left, by the time they went to school, they would have had 5 room changes. So we have to really think about that. And it's like me starting in a setting and the manager's saying to me, "Right, Laura, you're going to be with us about 3.5 years. You're going to have 5 room changes." I'm like, "You're having a laugh, aren't you?" So we really need to have some reflections. And I've seen intergenerational groups. I did a study tour to New Zealand about 9 years ago, and it was just beautiful seeing this intergenerational setting and how the older children were naturally very caring to the younger children. And I know building physically wise, it's not always going to work out. There are a lot of schools in London, I don't know if it's the same in Birmingham, because of the low birth rate and families moving out of the city. that I'm seeing reception and nursery class joined together. This authors event I was at a few Saturdays ago, you had year 1 and year 2 joined together as a class. You've already got the book. I hope you all have. So thank you again to Birmingham for purchasing the books to give to every single early years setting in school. And I was contacted by somebody, I think it was on LinkedIn, and they said what they're going to do is buy a copy for every single child now. So when they're doing the home visits, they're going to gift a copy of the book to every single child. And I thanked her. She said it's 23 copies we need to get. But I'm saying that to say this, that like Birmingham, if any of you need to, so obviously if you buy it off, I don't know, big supply, it's going to be more expensive, but I'm sure Birmingham can connect you with who they got it from to get it at a cheaper discounted rate. And I'm sure that they would probably do that, because she said she was buying 23 copies or something. So there we are. There's the book in terms of that big welcome. Kazuki comes in. He's a little bit shy. I'm just going through a few of the pages here. He's very quiet. Maya and Marley being their typical energetic self. They're sliding and stretching and everything. And then they label the feeling. He's able to say that why that empathy, and he says it's because he's feeling scared, he's worried, he's anxious, etc. And a lot of children will be able to identify with that if we cross-reference what I was saying at the beginning in terms of the thoughts and the feelings. Then he comes up with his own idea, being solution driven, that sense of belonging. What do you like doing? And he's thinking about origami. They make the origami, and yeah, and then they lived happily ever after. But in essence, the book is all about acknowledging feelings, what it's like for a child to come into a new environment, how we can make children feel welcome and they belonged. And sometimes I know we don't necessarily do that, do we, in terms of asking a child or even a grown up, what do you like doing? And how can we get children age, stage and ability to think about that? That's why I love Eleanor Goldsmith's work on that key person time. That key person time is wonderful. This is some bunting, and I think I may have shared it with settings and creating bunting as that form of welcoming. There are other resources that my publisher have made for this. The origami thing they've done, and a welcome booklet thing. And I've asked children how they may make other children feel welcome. And one child said, I'm just going to smile, Laura, I'll smile. And another one said, I'll give them a biscuit, you know, and that's the child's way of saying, I'm going to make you feel welcome. So that may be something that you want to do with your group, is that how do we make others feel welcome? So on one avenue, it's supporting new children with the transition, and on the other hand, it's getting children to think about how we support other children with their transitions and that sense of belonging. Sunflower seeds are symbolic to friendship. I'm watering mine in the garden. I've planted some, and this year they're growing. So a lot of settings are planting sunflower seeds, and obviously, as we know, planting seeds, it covers all the 7 areas of learning, measuring the growth, talking about everything. And just a few slides. This is a nursery school in Peckham, where I'm going to tomorrow. It's in a city. They're in an underserved area, and they've shared the book, like yourselves in Birmingham. They had pre-copies before, and Claire, the teacher there, when she shares something with children, she just records their thoughts and their feelings. Yeah. So I'll just dance through some of this. What makes you sad, Claire? So one of the children said it back to Claire. What makes you sad, Claire? Sometimes I feel shy, like when I go somewhere and see people. I stay by my dad. When I bump, I feel sad. Yeah. My mummy makes me chicken. I like spaghetti. And for this child, again, in terms of seeing themselves in the book, picking up on that as well, that the child could see themselves in this book. And I know some of you may know the work of she's actually Birmingham based, Liz Pemberton, the Black Nursery Manager. She covers all of this work in terms of her webinars and workshops, etc. And this is just amazing. His mum made him a bracelet, and then all the children made friendship bracelets. And isn't that a wonderful activity to do with children? It's such a beautiful picture, his hand over the book, isn't it? And then this is the children planting their sunflower seeds as well. I love this point. It's going to grow for 40 years. It's going to grow all the way up to the sky. And then you think to yourself, how would a 3-year-old know 40 years? But they know it's a very, in terms of their understanding. I may pop into there tomorrow, actually, because I am in the area. Amazing. And then I do some have adopted Vivian's work on, in the UK, it's called Helicopter Stories. So when I'm doing an author's visit, I get the children sometimes to write or to scribe or to make about their families. So here's with this particular child, and then I do the writing on that. And then the other thing as well, I know this is a transitional webinar, but I've been saying quite a few times, because we all use tablets now, when I did my food shopping this morning, everything's on my phone, So think about that, colleagues. How many times do children see you write? Yeah. How many times do they see you write? What can we do to share with parents as well to say that role modeling? And as Setin said to me, family, who I did a podcast for, when I talked about this in Nursery World Conference about a month ago, she said, it made me think that we don't see writing. I know from my birthday, when I get a birthday card now, I know whose handwriting it is. Yeah. So just ponder that. End of session feedback, as we're talking to parents about, using books, how you can weave in around communication, language and literacy throughout the session. Story sacks, no one preaching to the converted, using the library, screen time, which we know. I always say, let's not judge parents, but how can we show parents another way? So I say, maybe suggest to parents where possible to have a bag at the door with books from a library, mark making, so they take that, and maybe say boundaries. So not at the table, all of these things to support children with their listening. We do have Jojo and Gran episodes as well, colleagues. So that's really good for children's listening. But how can we show parents to get children away from using screens? But screens are important. But for me, it's all about boundaries as well. And I'm going to share with you that clip afterwards. Just wanted to say this is my book about families. Again, how do we approach different families? This is from my book, My Family, Your Family. How we support families from different communities. My leaning in and listening over the last 5 or 6 years has been to the Gypsy Roma travel community. As you can see, this school, Accrington Pastures Primary School, they set this up as their, as a family thing. They used Richard O'Neill's book, The Can Caravan. Have we got books in our settings that represent the Gypsy Roma travel community? And as you can see there, they've got the home, but they've actually put the home as a caravan. I had Lisa Smith from the Gypsy Roma travel community. She quality checked My Family, Your Family. She shared at my conference. She said she may have started school and she was asked to draw a home. I'm getting my notebook. She was going and she was started to draw a caravan. She looked around, all the rest of her friends drew a house. So she scrabbled it out. And that's the first time she felt shamed about her culture. Yeah. So think about how we represent children and families as they're transitioning in terms of that welcoming. I'll share with you, this lasts for about 5 minutes. I'm not going to have time. So that was just a clip about the Gypsy Roma traveling community. I was raised in an underserved community. how do we make sure again that everybody is welcomed irrespective, and they're mindful of our language. I'm not a fan of deprivation or disadvantage. I like the term underserved or under-resourced. This was some webinars, podcasts that I did with all of these different families many moons ago. We've got a two-dad family, we've got blended, we've got kinship care, we've got adoptive family, a family talking about their faith on here. And for me, it's all about how we care, connect, console, and communicate with children. And this was a family session within a family hub a few years ago. My early years reading timeline, which you can download, which is really good for parents, especially as we're coming up to the summer reading challenge, because it's suitable for early years children as well. My poster there, and then the impact on children. So this was a setting that I went into. These two children, the child with the glasses, he had just started 2 weeks previously. I spoke to mum and I said, oh, how have you settled in? She said, oh, I love it. They make a fuss of my child. They make a fuss. And she told me a bit more. And she said, they asked me, you know, what he's had for breakfast when he comes in. They ask about my day, which has helped us to settle in from the transition from moving from north to south. This other child came running in because his mum worked in the setting. I had permission to use this photograph. And she said, oh, he's been like his key person. Do you know what I mean? Her mum was a teacher. I said, I know exactly what you mean. Then went to speak to the key person. So I wanted to see how they were recording his transition in those first few weeks. This was the first picture, and I didn't have to ask anymore, because I knew then this was a setting, and they did family grouping as well in this setting. These are some really useful, I know you access all of these, CBeebies Parenting, fantastic. When they changed it about a year ago, I went to the launch of this, Best Start in Life, really great resources for your setting as well as for your families, you know. Yeah, and to end with this, it's all about relationships, and excuse me, that everything we do from transitions, that professional curiosity, the professional love, it is all about relationships. And then that human love, colleagues, is important. And tomorrow I'm on another webinar. If you This is only going to be suitable for those of you who are listening live at this moment. I'm Vice President of Early Education, well, one of the Vice President, and I've got a webinar tomorrow. I'm not presenting, it's just a loose chat with everybody. So if you're available tomorrow evening, if you're not too hot and tired from school or your setting, please feel free to join in of that tomorrow. And we've got a couple of minutes I need to end with something that lasts for 2 minutes, Claire. So any reflections, colleagues, any questions, any thoughts, anything you're going to change tomorrow, next week, in September, in January, anything you think, oh, I'm going to read up a little bit and more about that?
While you're thinking, and obviously you have the opportunity to pop anything you like in the chat, might also be nice maybe if you have the chance to put your cameras on, so at least Laura can, you know, although you haven't been able to see everybody there through the session, maybe, you know, put your cameras on so at least Laura can see everybody, and unmute if you want to say anything in and amongst all
yeah,
that.
it doesn't maybe have to be a reflection, anything you want to share to say, okay, then, or it may be that you didn't, everything I've shared, you know already, which is fantastic. Anything for any colleagues who, you know, weren't able to join this our twilight session, you're able to take back anything, anybody?
Oh, I can see some people putting their cameras on, so hopefully you can see a few people as well, Laura.
Yeah, so if there's
In a minute.
anything from anything coming in, or am I getting off lightly?
So in the chat, somebody's put they want to refresh their knowledge of secure attachments. There's somebody there thinking about introducing the book and making bunting with the children. And I will say we're already seeing settings and schools around the city sharing on their social media what they're doing with the book. And so if any of you, as you start getting into it, tag us in, please, so that we can
and tag me.
Yes,
Laura Henry-Allain.
Yeah, tag us all in so we can share, because there's so much great practice happening all around the city. And this is part of the purpose of the Birmingham Early Years Networks, that we can share that practice and learn from each other. So, and that's today you've reminded us of things that we might have done previously and have forgotten about even,
Exactly. And isn't it wonderful that Oasis Woodview, they are a Birmingham school, so that's good practice that they're doing as well,
Yeah.
So anything else, colleagues?
We've got people commenting they're interested in, oh, hold on a minute, I've jumped too many things coming in. Interested in the What Happened to You book, going to be ordering that. Remembering that sometimes school rules, in inverted commas, adult convenience should be less important than that child you mentioned coming in with his rucksack. It's really important to hold on to that, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you.
And I think as well, Claire, it's so was there another one in there?
Oh yes, there's several. Yes. So shall I carry on with this, or do you want to add on that?
You carry on.
So just to say that somebody's put thank you. We talk about transitional items, but we may use this a little more to support children. So, again, I love that you're being reflective and thinking, we know about it, but what does it look like in practice? Somebody else has put further reading, creating bunting, edit to our child at home forms to include a greater range of home types, including caravans. And we're speaking to parents, with parents. Love the phrase, what happened to you? Being curious. Thank you. Prioritizing children's well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. There's some really great reflections. As I said, I don't think what I've shared it's nothing new. Sometimes it just acts as a gentle reminder, doesn't it? So what we're going to do, colleagues, now I'm going to watch there's a little bit of a clip here. This again is from Grosvenor. So this is just the voice of the child, and so the children will be they'll have their little bit, and then we will end off the webinar, if that makes sense.
I like our spider, and I have sparkly legs. I like the Marley and the great big tidy up and pick up the litter. I like going on a bear hunt because there's a big friendly bear. I love Trumpicon because it's rainbow and sparkly. I like the one. I like Little Fred because she's a red girl like me. I like to bring home caterpillar because we have real caterpillars at nursery. I love Neocon Club because it's magic. I like my pet star because it looks pretty in the sky. Red, because baby could fit in a piece. I like the perma candle because the girl has a dinosaur pet in her house. I like Alice for Love. I like Daddy and Grandma and Mommy. I like Bad Car. I like Naughty Dad. It's had on Bedja.
For me, it's all because it's all about the books and the voice of the child again. And I just think that's, from what we started, if we go back to the beginning, it was about the unique child. So the unique child, the rights of the child and the voice of the child within that. I've got a podcast where I interview other authors. So, and also too, I have a song which I didn't put on here. I've got a song which is on YouTube. It's the Pick Up a Book song, which they're going to use actually for the reading challenge, summer reading challenge. So thank you, colleagues, on a boiling hot day for giving up your time for an hour and a half. If you want to screenshot that, please feel free to do so. As I said, you will get the slides. But if any of you, I know what it's like when you've listened to something, especially on a day like today, you think, oh, I wish I'd asked Laura this. Please feel free to email me with any questions or queries. It's all part of the warranty. And have a lovely, lovely evening. And I don't know when I'll be back in Birmingham. So if any of you want to invite me to your settings, for an author visit, for training, for keynotes, for a bit of dance. I was at an event yesterday, I was even dancing. So there we are. So thank you so much, colleagues. And yeah, and I appreciate you all because it's hard work working within early years. I appreciate you all for everything you do. Take care. See you later.
Laura, can we just say a huge big thank you? You've covered so much there, and I think we are recording it. We will share the slides so people can reflect on it, but so much to reflect. I've written all sorts down here, just things that make you think, and that idea that we need to think about transitional culture and we need to think about children, and that's why we're there, and keep those at the heart of what we do. One of those comments, about we don't do, it's not about the adults, it's about the children.